All right. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. It's a prog rock reference. Look it up. We're going to talk about the sentimental romance plot and the Cinderella story. And you've read Josephine Donovan's essay about the sentimental plot, and you realize that these romances basically conform to the conventions of the Cinderella story, which means that our heroine is a girl/young woman whose parents have, usually both of them are dead, sometimes the dad's still around, and then she gets adopted by a stepmother or by a wicked aunt, and has to make her way in a home with two nasty stepsisters, and they torture her. And Cinderella is put through all kinds of, she has all kinds of stress and trouble, and she never complains. She never complains. She suffers in silence. And in the end, Prince Charming shows up, recognizes her beauty, scrapes away all the ash off of her face, realizes beneath all that ash is the gorgeous Cinderella, so named for the cinders that she had to clean out every morning for her stepsisters when they were getting the morning work done. She was covered with ashes. Sometimes she's called Ashela. And she gets married to the prince. Now, she doesn't love the prince. She doesn't choose the prince. He chooses her. And after they get married, we don't really know what happens after that. And that's the plot of the sentimental romance story. Once there's the marriage at the end of the book, it stops. So these are not really adult stories. In fact, the story stops when the character is becoming an adult. We never see what they're like in their 30s or 40s or 50s or beyond. And there are many different versions of the Cinderella story. In fact, there are over 1,000. Last time I looked up the scholarship on this, there were over 1,000 of them. The oldest version is a Chinese version. The fact that Cinderella's foot is so small that nobody else can fit into the shoe may have something to do with the Chinese practice of foot binding. But there are Native American versions of this story, and the oldest is over 2,000 years old. The most recent came out yesterday because it's a plot that's still continuously in use. It's very popular. One of my favorite versions of the Cinderella story is the Brothers Grimm version. It follows the regular plot of the Cinderella story, but it gets interesting when the prince goes on the hunt after finding her shoe left over at the ball. He goes on the hunt for the girl whose foot will fit in the shoe. And the stepsisters are determined to win this contest, but they realize that their feet are far too big to fit into Cinderella's shoe. So the prince comes around and he hands out the shoe to the first stepsister, says, "Try it on," and she goes somewhere, chops off her toes, comes back, puts the shoe on, and it fits. And the prince says, "Oh, it must be you." But some white birds fly around her head and sing a song to the prince, actually. "Ruku, Ruku, there's blood in the shoe." And the prince looks down and realizes, oh, there's like blood pumping out of the end of her shoe. So she chopped off her toes. The second stepsister cuts off her heel in the same fashion. Once again, the prince, who's pretty stupid, says, "Must be her." And the birds come down from the sky. They fly around and they sing the same song, "Ruku, Ruku, there's blood in the shoe." I don't know the tune to it. And he looks down and again there's, well, that's not her. And then finally, and I guess perhaps because the shoe is now well lubricated by blood, I assume, Cinderella is able to easily slip her foot into the shoe. There are many different versions of the story, all of which depend upon a young woman being good, selfless, often quite Christian in her morality, being chosen by a man, and living happily ever after. If she is not good, according to the sentimental plot, if she's Anna Karenina, if she's Madame Bovary, if she's any of those women who commit adultery or do things they're not supposed to do, they don't get a husband, they die. Well, they had a husband, they cheated on him, but they die at the end of the book. So it's a very strict plot. Women are either purely good or purely bad, and their fate is decided by that. There's no in between. Can't make any mistake. It's a very narrow path. Cinderella follows the narrow path and is rewarded with a husband. In more recent times, Anne Sexton's version of the fairy tales, such as Cinderella. I recommend those if you really like fairy tales. Those are wonderful retellings of the fairy tales. One of my favorite versions of the Cinderella story, showed to me by my wife. Never seen it before for some reason. It's Pretty Woman, prostitute with a heart of gold. Richard Gere's Prince Charming. What does he do at the end? If you remember the movie, those of you who've seen it, I guess it's kind of an old movie at this point. What does he do? He rides up in a white limousine, climbs the fire escape, and takes the princess out of the tower. She happens to be a prostitute, but nonetheless, she has proven that she is actually a good woman by that point. So she is rewarded, nonetheless, with the prince at the end. She's rewarded with Richard Gere, as my wife tells me. The young Richard Gere. Oh, he still looks good. All right, thanks. Enjoy. Hope you find some of those other versions of the story.